Okay, so what we're going to learn about today is we're finally going to use the income summary account. We've been writing it on everything, but it's always had a zero balance, like we haven't done any transactions in it. We're finally going to use it today. Essentially, you got two types of accounts. You've got your permanent accounts and you've got your temporary accounts. The permanent accounts are assets, liabilities, and specifically the capital account. So the owner's investment in the company. Your temporary accounts are your revenue, expenses, as well as drawings. So at the end of each accounting cycle, so whether or not it's the end of every month or the end of every quarter, or the end of every half year, regardless of what you do, we want to close out these ones. And essentially, close out means we want to have a balance of $0. Okay? So what we do is essentially at the end of each accounting cycle, we want to return our temporary accounts back to a zero. It allows us to see our revenue and expenses on a month by month basis. So if we constantly make them be back to a zero balance, you're kind of starting fresh every accounting cycle. That's what this is. So what we're going to learn about today is how to close out the accounts. So it's a 2-day process. So we're going to do the general journal way of doing it today. And then next week or Friday, I haven't decided yet, we will do the general ledger way of closing them out. But we're essentially going to do the same thing both days, just using two different forms. So essentially, this is what we're going to do. If an account has a debit balance, then we credit the account to close it. If the account has a credit balance, then we debit it to close it, right? Because debits and credits are opposites. So here we go. In order to close it out, we're going to use income summary. So we're finally going to use that income summary. So this is the one that we use to close out revenue and expenses. So we're finally going to put numbers into that income summary. Did you grab one? Okay. We're finally going to use that income summary account and we're going to use it to close things out. So here we go. So here is our revenue. So I've got the revenue highlighted in yellow and I've got our expenses highlighted in green. Okay. So we can see right now, sorry, I'm just going to flip the page here. So I realize yours are kind of dark, but it is on there. So revenue right now is a credit balance. Expenses have a debit balance. Okay. So to close out revenue, we are going to debit them, and to close out expenses, we're going to credit them. Okay, so we're going to do the opposite so that these numbers cancel each other out. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is close out the revenue accounts. Second thing we're going to do is close out the expense accounts. Okay, so to close out the revenue, so this is your general journal. Okay, so what you do is you copy down. So you can see here that right now the revenue balances are being credited. So to close them out, we are going to debit them, right? We're going to do the opposite. And then what you do is you add that up, you figure out the total, and remember for every transaction, debits have to equal credits. So then you're going to write income summary and you're going to credit it that total. So debits equal credits. So now your revenue is balanced out to zero because here it has a credit balance of $46.75 and a credit balance of $18.90. So by debiting it, we've nulled it out. Okay. So, and then income summary now has a credit balance of $65.65. Okay. For expenses. So expenses have a debit balance. So to close them out, we're going to credit them, right? So they cancel each other out. So my expenses So right here, so this part is the revenue, this part is the expenses. So the expenses all get credited. If I add those all up, I get $700. So income summary gets debited, right? Because debits have to equal credits. So revenue, we debit the revenues, put the total into income summary. Here, we credit the expenses and put the total into income summary. Okay. So if this was a T account, remember your T accounts from the last? So income summary, debits, credits. Right now we've got 65, 65, and 700, right? So that's how you close out revenue. That's how you close out expenses. You just do the opposite to whatever's on the worksheet. And then the matching, right, debits have to equal credits. The other account you're using is income summary. Now, don't worry about the order. So see how here they did the debits first, then the credit, and then here they did the debits, then the credits. If you did credits first, then debits, I don't care. As long as you've got the right numbers in the right columns, I don't care what order you put them in. Normally, we do debits first, then credits. I don't care. As long as you've got the right numbers in the right columns, we're good to go. Okay. Okay. Lastly, we now need to close out income summary. Okay, so we close the revenue to income summary, we close the expenses to income summary. So if you think back to this T-chart here, you have a credit of 65.65 and you've got a debit of 700. So to make it have a zero balance, we have to put a number here. To figure out that number, I'm going to subtract these two, right? Because one's in the credit column, one's in the debit column. So if I go 65.65 minus 700, I get out 58.65. So to close out income summary, I'm going to have to debit income summary. Now, that number is your net income. If you look back on the worksheet, right here, net income, 58.65. And again, it was net income because revenue is bigger than expenses. So that's why we had a net income. So what we're going to do to close out income summary, I'm going to debit income summary, 58.65. So right here, I'm going to debit income summary, 58.65. Now again, every transaction needs a debit and a credit. So that means the credit is going to be capital. So you use the capital account. Why are you using the capital account? Remember, this is net income. Net income is how much money your company made last month. Every ounce of money your company makes, you're going to take that and put it into the capital account. The capital account is the money that the owner has invested in the company. So when your company makes money, your investment in the company goes up. And that's why it's credited. Because remember, the capital account, if you think about back to those T-charts, on the capital account, the credit is the plus side. Okay. So this big table here, so this is what closing revenue looks like. This is what closing expenses looks like. This is what closing net income looks like. Okay. So revenue gets closed to income summary. Expenses get closed to income summary. Income summary gets closed to capital. Those are the three steps. Okay. The last thing you have to close is drawings. So if you go back and look at the drawings line, The drawings line has a debit of 1,050. So if it has a debit balance of 1,050, we close it out by crediting. Okay. So I had to handwrite it in here. So we're going to credit drawings 1,050. And then again, don't use income summary. You're going to use capital. Because remember, capital is money into the company that the owner makes. Drawings is money out of the company that the owner takes. So we have to subtract the drawings from the capital. Because again, remember capital, right? This is plus, this is minus. So by debiting capital, we're taking that money out of the company. So his company made 5865, but the owner took out 1,050, so we have to take that off of the 5865, off of the net income. So it's a 4-step process. Close revenue to income summary. Close expenses to income summary. Close income summary to capital. Close drawings to capital. 4 things. How do you know how to close? You do the opposite of what's on the worksheet. Okay? So I want to do one more with you. Okay? So I realize this is a little fuzzy. It was the clearest I could make it when I was printing it out, but it is a little fuzzy on your sheet. So revenue is your sales. So revenue is currently being credited 2,000. Expenses is being debited 50 and 100. Okay? So first thing we're going to do is close out the revenue. So revenue is being credited, so to close it, we are going to debit it. So here's the answer already all done. Okay? So we're going to debit the revenue, credit income summary. Okay, that's the revenue. For the expenses, the expenses are each going to get credited. So then income summary gets debited. Okay. Then we have to close out income summary. So if you just do a quick look here, income summary currently has been, just look here. So we got income summary here and income summary here. So right now, income summary has a credit of 2,000 and a debit of 150. So right now, the balance in income summary is 1,850. Yes, the balance is 1,850. And it's 1,850, so the credit column is 2,000, the debit column is 150. So I have to credit 1,850 so that I would have 2,000 in this column and 2,000 in that column. Does that make sense? So I'm going to credit income summary 1,850. So now this is 2,000 and that is 2,000. So they've got it out to 0. Okay? So since I have credited income summary, I am going to debit capital. Okay? And then finally, drawings. Drawings is right here. Drawings has a debit balance of $200. So to close out drawings, we're going to credit drawings, which means we're going to debit capital. So what we've got here is revenue, expenses, income summary, drawings. Okay, now again, I don't care. See how they all have the debit entrance first and then the credit column. So they went debit, credit, debit, credit, debit, credit. debit credit. That's the way you're supposed to do it. But if you accidentally did the credits here and then the debit there, I don't care. It's as long as your debits equal your credits by the time all is said and done. Okay. Okay, one more. Okay, just one more. So, revenue, expenses, drawings. Okay, and then the income summary will fall in the middle. So, revenue has a credit balance, so I'm going to debit it to close it off. So revenue has a so I'm going to credit the revenue. Sorry, debit the revenue, credit the income summary. So this is how you close off the revenue account. Your expenses all have a debit balance, so I'm going to credit them to close them off. This total gets put to income summary. So that is your expenses. So now look at income summary. Income summary, you've got $1,000 in the credit column and $1,350 in the debit column. Okay, so under income summary, you've got $1,000 in the credit column and $1,350 in the debit column, right? 1,000 and $1,350. To make it equal 0, which column do you put the 350 in? There, right? So that this is 1,350 and this is 1,350. So I am going to credit income summary 350. So the matching debit goes to capital. So this is income summary. Finally, drawings. Drawings has a debit balance. So to close it out, I'm going to credit drawings, and then the matching debit goes to capital. So revenue gets closed to income summary. Expenses get closed to income summary. Income summary gets closed to capital. Drawings gets closed to capital. That's it. Okay? So, and again, you're just trying to make, whoops, oh dang. You're just trying to make your debits equal your credits. Okay? So, okay. So I'm not sure if the assignment has you doing one of them or two of them. I honestly don't remember. But it is under day 7. But again, just look, I think it's Jerry's steam cleaning service, but you're literally just going to do this process. So revenue gets closed to income summary, expenses gets closed to income summary goes to capital, drawings goes to capital. Okay? So I'll have you work in the lab today and tomorrow, okay, getting this done. And if you need catch-up time for any other past assignment, and then Friday, we'll do the second half of this lesson. Essentially, Friday's lesson will be the exact same thing as this, but instead of writing it in a general journal, we're going to do it in a ledger. So we're going to do these things instead. Okay? All right, I'll meet you down at the lab.